When you think of filmmaking lights, you probably picture the big and powerful lights, right? Like this 300 watt, a 600 watt, or why not this 1200 watt light? But sometimes it's the smallest lights that make the biggest difference. Meet the Aputure ADC, and in this video we'll dive into what makes this light unique, how it works, and we'll look at 3 different lighting setups using only this one light. There is, however, a catch though. This light might not be for everyone. We'll get to that by the end of the video, but first let's see what comes in the box when purchasing this light. The kit comes in this nice case that fits perfectly within the Aputure lineup. Now there are 3 important things I noticed when taking the ADC out of the box. The first thing is just how small it actually is. It's really not a whole lot bigger than your standard mirrorless camera. And you'll see in some of the lighting setups we'll look at later how handy it can be to have such a small light. The second thing I noticed is the build quality of the ADC. I've tried and tested a lot of similar small lights from nearly every other brand out there, and even though some are better than others, I can honestly say that this is the first one that really feels as high quality as any of the other bigger Aputure lights. It also has an IP65 weather rating, so it's dust and water resistant. Thirdly, and perhaps the most unique thing about this light, is the mount. This is a mini Pro-Lock mount, and if you don't know what a Pro-Lock mount is, Aputure kind of introduced it on their latest 1200X light. It basically functions like a PL mount, where you twist it and then lock or unlock the modifier. It just makes attaching modifiers a whole lot easier. This one is basically the mini version of the one we saw on the Aputure 1200X. There is of course a power brick in the box and a reasonably long power cable. Underneath this little hatch door are 2 modifiers that come with the kit. The first one is a standard reflector, and the second one is something that I personally haven't seen on any other lights before, and it's this bulb diffuser. We'll test out both of these later on, but I can already tell you that I was especially surprised by this little bulb diffuser. What's really slick is on the back of the power brick there is a V-mount connector that connects to the V-mount holder on the light. With a lot of similar lights, there's not really a good solution for mounting the power adapter, and it then usually just ends up dangling around somewhere. So now that we've gone over what comes in the box, let's go ahead and look at how you can control this light and all the different light modes the ADC has to offer. Looking at the back of the ADC is where you'll find all the connections and controls. Starting at the top right, you'll find the power button, a menu button where you can access different light modes, control settings, and system settings. A light mode button will take you directly to all the different light modes, which we'll look at in a second. A preset button which will take you to any light presets you might have saved. A back button which will obviously take you back to the previous window. And as you could already tell, turning the knob on the right scrolls through the menu or the settings. And to select or deselect something, you just push it down. At the bottom there is the DC power in, a USB-C connection, and a DMX connection. The Aputure ADC can also be connected to Sidus Link, which is Aputure's lighting control app. And here you can change all your settings, set up effects, or select colors on the color wheel, which is great in case you have this light mounted somewhere where you can't really reach the controls on the back. Next, let's have a look at all the different light modes that the ADC has to offer, because Aputure really jam-packed this light full of great features. The first one is CCT, which we all know from many other bicolored lights, but the ADC has a massive CCT range from 1800 Kelvin all the way to 20,000 Kelvin. The light features Aputure's new Blair light engine, which means there are actually blue, lime, amber, indigo, and red LEDs in there. This creates some of the best white lights seen on LED lights. It also offers a full plus-minus green shift. Next we have HSIC color control. This is where you can set your different hues and saturation. The ADC can reach up to 90% of the Rec 2020 color space, which in human words basically means it can deliver all colors imaginable. In RGB mode, you can set your color by adjusting specific red, green, or blue values. Gel mode is where you can select different types of gels. So with more traditional 5600 Kelvin lights, you would use industry standard gels as color filters. For example, gels to warm up or cool down your light, or to change the color entirely. Now instead of using physical gels, the ADC is actually capable of simulating the look of all these different industry standard gels. Next is source mode. Again, a super interesting feature, because here you'll find a huge range of possible practical lights you might be dealing with on set, or ones you might want to emulate, like certain bulbs or sodium vapor lights. And this, combined with all the different gels from before, just offers you a huge library to get the exact color tones you might be after. XY mode is where you can adjust your X or Y coordinates on the color spectrum. So even more options of selecting the exact color you want. Effects mode is something I'm guessing most of you are familiar with, so you'll find a bunch of different effects here, anything from fire, bad bulb, party mode, and so on. Under Sidus effects, you can access any saved custom effects. Now I'm going to set up the ADC in here and then try out the different included modifiers so you can have a look at what they do and how they change the light quality. So right now I have the ADC without any modifier attached to it, so bare bulb, and you can tell obviously the light is not very flattering, it's very harsh, and we're also getting quite a lot of spill on the background there. Now one thing to note though, right now I have the light set at 2%, so even at that low output, it's actually bright enough to light me. But let's put on the reflector and see what that looks like. So this is with the reflector attached to the ADC, and of course you can tell there is a lot less light spilling everywhere because we get a much more focused beam of light, but still the quality of light is not very good and you would definitely not use this as a key light. So let's try out that bulb modifier and see what that looks like. So now I have the bulb modifier attached to the ADC, and I'm honestly quite surprised by how good this looks. I did have to turn up the output to 3.5%, but still that's pretty nuts for a small light like this. So you can tell that the light is a lot more flattering and soft, and honestly I think you would be able to use this as a key light if you're in a pinch, if you for example don't have enough space for any diffusion or anything like that. An issue I've noticed with other smaller lights like this is that the fans can get pretty loud when trying to cool down the light. The Aputure ADC has a few different fan mode options, which can be useful if you are recording audio with this light on set. Smart just means the fan will turn on or spin faster when the light gets too hot. So it kind of regulates itself, and I've found this to be the best option so far. High is recommended when the ambient temperature is higher than 40 degrees Celsius. Medium sets the fan at a lower speed. This is recommended at an ambient temperature lower than 35 degrees Celsius. And silent will set the fan to its lowest setting, but reduces the output to 20 watts. Alright, with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and look at a few lighting setups, and then I want to share a few doubts that I have about this light. This shot is definitely a much less realistic and more stylized look, but again the Aputure ADC is serving as a key light. So if I just turn that off, you can tell I have no exposure on my face right now. Let's turn it back on. So it's basically just bouncing off the back of the fridge there, and I'll show you what that looks like. This is a perfect example of why it's so useful to have small lights like this, because imagine having to squeeze your 600C in your fridge. So I have the ADC set to a green hue, and that's creating some nice color contrast with these orange kitchen lights here. So essentially it's a very simple shot. You know, we just have a green color from the fridge and then our orange lights that are already here, and that's creating some nice color contrast. For this shot, I'm using the ADC as my key light, basically enhancing the light already coming from the window, because you can see that light from the window reflecting in the wall back there. So that's motivating where this key light is coming from. As you can see, when I turn off the ADC, the light from the window itself is not bright enough to actually light the shot. So let's see what that setup looks like. All right, so this is how we have things set up. I have the Aputure ADC boomed up on a C-stand, and we have the bulb modifier on there just to soften the light a little bit. And I also added these two pieces of cinefoil to control the light a little bit so it wouldn't be spilling on the walls too much. Now I don't know if you can tell, but this is a very small space, and also the ceilings are not very high. So this is where a small light like the Aputure ADC comes in really handy. Now obviously with the light set up so high against the ceiling, I can't actually reach the controls, but that's where the Sidus Link app comes in really handy. So I can just change all the settings on the app here. I have it set to 5%, 5600 Kelvin. And then I just added a 16% green shift to just make it look a little bit more gritty and dirty. This is another very simple setup with only one fixture, our Aputure ADC, which is behind the door here. And as you can tell, it's set to a red hue. The other light that you're seeing in the scene and what's filling up the shadows is just natural daylight coming in through the windows. The only difference is that I changed the camera's white balance from 5600 Kelvin to 3300 Kelvin. And that just makes that light look a lot more blue and helps with the color contrast in this shot. As you might have noticed in those three lighting setups, I was using the bulb diffuser modifier for all of those, and I'm really happy that Aputure included this in the kit, because it is important to note that the mini Pro-Lock mount on the Aputure ADC is a proprietary mount, which means that it won't just take any standard Bowens mount modifiers. And at the moment of recording this video, there are no other modifiers available for this light besides these two included in the kit. Now I'm sure it won't take long for Aputure to release a bunch of great light modifiers for the ADC, and Aputure did say that they will be releasing a Bowens mount adapter, which will then kind of solve all of that. But if I'm honest, I really wish it didn't have a proprietary mount, or at least that the Bowens mount adapter was included in the kit. Anyway, Aputure also mentioned another cool accessory that will be available for this Aputure ADC, which is a hand grip with a battery mount. And I think this is such a vital accessory for a light like this. I've used many other small lights with hand grips and running off of battery power, and it's so great to have these on smaller run and gun sets. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that on this light as well. Alright, so in conclusion, is the Aputure ADC for you, and should you get one? Well, looking at the price of the ADC, which is $649, it's definitely at the higher end of similar lights. And that doesn't include many of the accessories like the Bowens adapter or hand grip, which you do get in the kit with other lights. But that being said, the Aputure ADC is without a single doubt the best build, the most feature-rich, and the most professional LED COB light on the market right now. So really, if you're looking for a long-term investment and you really want to get the absolute best light out there, or you've already invested in the Aputure ecosystem and want to add a smaller light to that, then yes, you will not be disappointed by the Aputure ADC, and it's 100% worth it. By the way, Aputure has also just released a brand new 1000C light, which is like the big brother of this one. I'll be featuring that on the channel real soon, so if you don't want to miss that, definitely consider subscribing. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!